We live in interesting times for the headlines. Thousands of Mozambicans are still stranded by cyclone-induced floods that swept through the central region of the country and are without water, raising fears of outbreaks of diseases such as cholera and malaria. New Zealand bans assault weapons following the Christchurch mosque massacre. And Filipinos in New Zealand react to the mosque terror attacks. Plus later, EDC film Guerrero premieres in Moscow, Russia. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us, and now to the news. New Zealand is banning the sale of assault rifles and semi-automatic weapons with immediate effect. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said Thursday, rapidly making good on a pledge to tighten the country's gun laws. The move comes less than a week after a white supremacist rampaged through two mosques, killing 50 people as they prayed, sparking global revulsion. Take a look.
The attacker on 15 March took a significant number of lives using primarily two guns. They were assault rifles and they were purchased legally on an A category gun licence, the standard licence held by gun owners in New Zealand. The capacity of these assault rifles was then enhanced using 30-plus round magazines, essentially turning them into military-style semi-automatic weapons. While the modification of these guns was illegal, it was done easily through a simple online purchase. The guns used in this terrorist attack had important distinguishing features. First, their capacity, and also their delivery. They had the power to shoot continuously, but they also had large capacity magazines. That the time for the mass and easy availability of these weapons must end. And today, they will. Today I'm announcing that New Zealand will ban all military-style semi-automatic weapons. We will also ban all assault rifles. We will ban all high-capacity magazines. We will ban all parts with the ability to convert semi-automatic or any other type of firearm into a military-style semi-automatic weapon. We will ban parts that cause a firearm to generate semi-automatic, automatic, or close to automatic gunfire. In short, every semi-automatic weapon used in the terrorist attack on Friday will be banned in this country. These changes will require legislation. That legislation is now being drafted and will be introduced under urgency. My expectation is that the law will be in place by the end of the next 2-week sitting session, which is by the 11th of April.
Meanwhile, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern also directed officials to develop a gun buyback scheme for those who already own such weapons. She said fair and reasonable compensation would be paid. Take a look.
I can assure people that there will be time for the returns to be made and that they will not be criminalised overnight. After a reasonable period for returns, those who continue to possess these guns will be in contravention of the law. Currently, the penalties for this range from fines of up to $4,000 and/or 3 years in prison. The draft legislation will look to increase these penalties. I want to acknowledge that the weapons available in New Zealand are only part of the problem, and loopholes with our current law continue to exist. We do have guns in New Zealand that are used for legitimate purposes by responsible owners every single day. And that includes our rural community. They manage pests, they use for animal welfare, and also for recreation. I've been steadfast in my belief that the vast majority of these owners will support what we are doing here today, because it's about all of us. It's in the national interest, and it's about safety.
As the Prime Minister has also alluded to, police are definitely encouraging firearms owners to go to the police website and use the online form to arrange to hand over the MSSAs and assault rifles. Finally, I want to remind that it is a privilege and not a right to own a firearm in New Zealand. We know that there are many gun owners with legitimate reasons for owning firearms, especially in our rural and provincial communities. This work is not directed at them. Our focus is on ensuring the immediate safety and peace of mind of our communities.
Meanwhile, petitioners gathered in front of New Zealand's Parliament on Thursday to urge the ban of semi-automatic weapons before Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern confirmed that the country is banning the sale of assault rifles and semi-automatic weapons with immediate effect. Take a look.
We all started the petitions because we wanted to see meaningful change made to our gun laws that make sure that the events of Friday never happen again. And the fact that we've managed to collect just shy of 70,000 signatures in under a week is a clear signal that the community is ready for that change.
And we have a duty to respond to violence with non-violence. And I think that you will see Parliament act decisively on this in the very short future.
I cannot understand why New Zealanders have access to weapons for public sale that were made specifically to kill other human beings.
Now, New Zealand is still in mourning for the 50 people killed in the attack on 2 mosques in Christchurch, and all the 50 have been identified. And we're still getting some reactions on this tragic incident. Our EBC correspondent, Evely Vivas in New Zealand, was able to talk to some Filipinos there and how they're reacting to this. Evelyn?
With me tonight is Timoteo Vivas Jr., or shall we call him June Vivas, and he's one of the officials working in one of the government here in New Zealand whose function is to protect the border. So, June, what can you say and what is your reaction when you heard about the news that happened last Friday in the city of Christchurch?
When we heard the news about the tragedy happened in Christchurch, in Christchurch in South Auckland, I feel so sad and I was terrified because that what happened was is truly a manifestation of growing evil doings in this world. But then the government offices in New Zealand will not stop to do some measures in order to stop this kind of violence. Actually, in the office where I'm working is we already done some measures and have a meeting to all of the officers in our organization to conduct the analysis and preparation and plan so as not to repeat the tragedy. And in the country of New Zealand, the government, I have heard the news just this afternoon that our Prime Minister has already declared the total ban for automatic rifles or semi-automatic and the guns, the parts of the guns that can make a certain rifle to be automatic are now all banned in New Zealand.
Because as as New Zealanders, we didn't think that this would happen here in New Zealand. We thought that New Zealand would be this safe haven. It's a beautiful country. It's a beautiful country of opportunities to raise your family. And it's just that we're so far away from all the other countries that we wouldn't think that we would have this kind of tragedy here in New Zealand. We question whether is it still safe for us? Do we need change in this country? So yeah, it's very shocking news. But I do commend the current government now for doing immediate action about the tragedy following last week. That they've now put up a gun law that they want to implement to the whole country of banning, I think, all guns. But I think they need to look at the situation objectively and subjectively, because I think you need, well, some people would need guns for their livelihood and among other things. But yeah, I think they need to look at the long-term effect of banning this gun law.
I couldn't believe it. I thought, it can't be possible. Like, what is this shooting about? It can't be in Christchurch. I mean, New Zealand, we're known to be one of the safest countries in the world. I think it took a while for that information to get absorbed in the system until someone else confirmed that it is actually true. So I went on social media, I went on Facebook, and the news about Christchurch was all over Facebook. And that's when it felt a little bit more real. And then I went on the news, checked. Like, I think I must have checked multiple times to just confirm, because I think like everyone else in New Zealand, we were all in shock. And up till now, I think a lot of people still cannot believe that it happened here in New Zealand. Like what everyone else is feeling here in New Zealand, I think we all know that the world is not safe anymore, unfortunately. So I think the feeling that I have right now, and I'm probably speaking for everyone here in New Zealand, is that we are saddened that this happened, and we are still very shocked that it happened here in New Zealand.
Yeah, that's right, Ms. Leia. New Zealand is really a low rate of crime when it comes to crime and all this kind of chaos. So this is not us. That's what they said. New Zealand, this is not us. So I'm reporting from New Zealand. I'm Sister Evelyn Vivas, and I'm one with 25.
Meanwhile, for a second day, hundreds of mourners gathered under gray skies in the shattered city to lay to rest more dead. Amid the sobs there were Muslims, non-Muslims, school children, and even at one point a phalanx of bikers. Pupils wept and embraced as they said goodbye to 14-year-old Syed Milne and 24-year-old Tariq Omar. Syed's father, John Milne, said his son was gunned down while praying at Al-Noor, the first of the two mosques attacked. Milne, who was at Thursday's funeral, had previously described his son as, quote, my special little one, who longed to play for Manchester United. Many came from Kashmir High School, which Syed attended, alongside fellow victim Hamza Mustafa, a Syrian refugee who was buried Wednesday.
We've all been really close to him, talking to him a lot, always being with him, you know, just giving as much support as he needs, but also if he does need some alone time, we'll allow him to that and all that kind of stuff, yeah. So at the moment, it's just time for them to just stay to themselves, stay together as a family, all that kind of stuff, yeah.
And the news continues here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. The catastrophe is still growing for hundreds and thousands of people in South Africa. Take a look. The death toll from last week's tropical cyclone has topped 300 in Mozambique and 2 neighboring countries where floodwaters have stranded some survivors in trees and rooftops. Survivors are now facing hunger, disease, and more potential flooding. 6 days after a vicious tropical storm tore through their neighborhood in Buzi, central Mozambique, they remain trapped by flood water. Stranded residents are desperate to be evacuated, but food and clean water are even more pressing needs. Aid workers on Wednesday spoke of women trapped in trees throwing their babies onto rescue boats. They talked of plucking people from head-deep water, only to strand them in patches of land where the water reached their ankles. The WFP, or World Food Program, said the cyclone and flooding have affected at least 2.6 million people in the region, causing a major humanitarian emergency that is getting bigger by the hour. In the port city of Beira, aid workers say there is only 2 to 3 days of clean water left. Some 300 people are confirmed dead in Mozambique and Zimbabwe, but the toll is expected to rise. The powerful cyclone swept to Beira last Thursday with winds of more than 177 kilometers per hour. It left a trail of devastation as it moved inland. Medical agencies are now warning that the shortage of food and clean drinking water is increasing the threat of disease. Meanwhile, the absolute horror of Cyclone Idai was just starting to become clear. It's just starting to become clear. Hundreds of thousands of people in desperate need of help. The World Food Program rushing food and other assistance to large numbers of desperate people stranded by rapidly rising floodwaters in Mozambique. A major humanitarian emergency that is getting bigger by the hour, according to the UN. And as our EBC correspondent Priscilla Chulo reports, the tragedy is still unfolding. Take a look.
The storm may be over, but the true tragedy of Cyclone Idai has yet to unfold. 202. That's the current death toll, but officials fear that number may climb to 1,000 in Mozambique alone. The cyclone struck the countries of Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Mozambique, pelleting the regions in intense rain. Rivers overflowed, swallowing villages whole, leaving them submerged beneath in as much as 6 meters of water, creating what have been termed as inland oceans, extending for miles in every direction. Many victims survived the initial onslaught of rain and flood by retreating to rooftops, seeking higher ground, and even scaling trees. Many are still in these places, awaiting rescue.
Casa, não tem casa, todas as casas já estão mal, mesmo bem estragadas, nem sítio de viver não temos, nem comida, nem nada, não temos quase, está tudo mal, desorganizado. Aqui morreram algumas pessoas, né? Aqui somos um pouco normal. Lá, do outro lado, lá no Buzi, sei lá o que, está assim mal porque todos estão na água. Então nós aqui em casa estamos fora mesmo, fora, não, fome tudo, não tem nada. Milho estão lá na machama, não conseguimos nenhuma coisa sequer.
Some are calling this the worst weather-related disaster to hit the southern hemisphere. And the UN Food Agency says this emergency is getting bigger and bigger by the hour.
So the situation in Mozambique, we're confronted with severe flooding and cyclone effects, 600,000 people affected, possibly even going up to 1.7 and more million people affected by cyclone and flooding. Communication completely broken, infrastructure severely damaged, particularly in the city of Beira, but also all the roads to Beira have been cut off. What WFP is doing at the moment, we're helping with the assessments, we're bringing in food through with airplanes and helicopters, we're bringing down helicopters. And we've started the food distribution for all the people affected in the flood and the cyclone affected areas.
Currently, the WFP, or World Food Program, has been coordinating airlifts, delivering food and blankets to people stranded in high places. Not only is the clock ticking on locating and delivering aid to those stranded by this inland sea, officials fear the long-term impact of this natural disaster. Idai struck before the year's corn or maize could be harvested. Maize is a staple food in these African countries, and the timing of this disaster will undeniably affect the region's food supplies for the coming year. Reporting from South Africa, I'm Priscilla Chulu for Eagle News, and I am one with 25.
To other news now, Boeing's ill-fated 737 MAX and federal regulators next week will face the first public grilling by Congress over the two fatal plane crashes in recent months. Senator Ted Cruz, a Texas Republican, called for a hearing of the Commerce Subcommittee on Aviation and Space for March 27, with 3 transportation officials, notably the acting head of the Federal Aviation Administration. Cruz intends to hold a second hearing to question Boeing officials as well as pilots and others in the industry, according to the statement. More than 300 people perished in the 2 crashes of 737 MAX 8s that occurred shortly after takeoff in Indonesia in October and in Ethiopia earlier this month. Boeing and the FAA are under investigation by the Transportation Department for how the rollout of the jet was handled, especially the new flight system, the MCA stall prevention system, which was implicated in the Lion Air crash in October. Pilots have complained they were not informed about the new system, which can force the nose of the plane down if it gets an erroneous reading from a sensor, making it appear the plane is at risk of stalling. More than 800 South Korean couples were live-streamed having sex in love motels, according to Seoul police on Thursday, in one of the largest scale and most intrusive examples yet of the country's spy cam epidemic. According to police, 4 men installed tiny cameras, all of them with a lens just 1 millimeter wide, in 42 rooms in 30 motels, hidden inside hairdryer holders, wall sockets, and digital TV boxes. They then live-streamed the footage 24 hours a day to a subscription website with some 4,000 members, hosted on a server overseas. Some viewers also paid a 50,000 won or $44 monthly supplement for access to exclusive content, edited highlights available on repeat. More than 800 couples were shown on the site over 3 months, according to police. The gang earned 7 million won from the scheme, the police said, adding that 2 suspects had been arrested and 2 more were being investigated. More than 5,400 were arrested for spy cam-related crimes in South Korea in 2017, but fewer than 2% were jailed. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is a
Lunes hanggang Biyernes, 1:00 hanggang 2:00 ng hapon.
Welcome back. The Federal Reserve doesn't expect to raise the benchmark lending rate again this year. According to a closely watched forecast released on Wednesday, U.S. time, a surprising sign the U.S. economy is slowing. It was an aggressive downshift that likely will come as a shock to many economists who didn't look for such a drastic change in outlook from the central bankers, who as recently as September expected to raise rates 3 times in 2019. Take a look.
We continue to expect that the American economy will grow at a solid pace in 2019, although likely slower than the very strong pace of 2018. We believe that our current policy stance is appropriate. Since last year, however, we've noted some developments at home and around the world that bear close attention. Given the overall favorable conditions in our economy, my colleagues and I will be patient in assessing what, if any, changes in the stance of policy may be needed. Last September, committee participants saw growth coming in at about 2.5% this year. Data arriving since September suggests that growth is slowing somewhat more than expected. Financial conditions tightened considerably over the fourth quarter. While conditions have eased since then, they remain less supportive of growth than during most of 2018. Growth has slowed in some foreign economies, notably in Europe and China. While the U.S. economy showed little evidence of slowdown through the end of 2018, the limited data we have so far this year have been somewhat more mixed. Unusually strong payroll job growth in January was followed by little growth at all in February. Smoothing through these variations, average monthly job growth appears to have stepped down from last year's strong pace, but job gains remain well above the pace necessary to provide jobs for new labor force entrants.
Meanwhile, U.S. stocks have fallen after President Trump said his administration was considering leaving tariffs on China for a substantial period. President Trump said that a trade deal with Beijing was coming along nicely, but his comments dampened hopes a deal would be reached soon. Senior U.S. officials will visit Beijing for a new round of trade war talks on March 28 to the 29th, followed by a trip to the U.S. by China's top negotiator in April, according to the Chinese Commerce Ministry on Thursday. The back-to-back trips come as Washington and Beijing battle over the final shape of a trade deal, with American officials demanding profound changes to Chinese industrial policy. Wall Street balked at Trump's comments, with the benchmark Dow Jones falling almost 1%. The Nasdaq and the S&P 500 also fell.
No, we're not talking about removing them. We're talking about leaving them, and for a substantial period of time, because we have to make sure that if we do the deal with China, that China lives by the deal. I say the European Union has been as tough on the United States as China, just not as much money involved. We'll see what happens. We'll see whether or not they negotiate a deal.
A dogged but isolated Prime Minister Theresa May was headed back to Brussels to beg for more time to deliver her Brexit plan, in defiance of the MPs who twice rejected the withdrawal deal. May's fellow European Union leaders meeting for their spring summit say they will tell her that Britain can postpone Brexit until May 22nd, but only if she can win over British lawmakers next week. If the withdrawal agreement is rejected again, an emergency summit could be called next week to agree to a longer extension until at least the end of the year. Otherwise, Britain's 4-decade-year-old European adventure comes to an abrupt end on March 29.
MP, it is high time we made a decision. So far, Parliament has done everything possible to avoid making a choice. Motion after motion and amendment after amendment has been tabled without Parliament ever deciding what it wants. all MPs have been willing to say is what they do not want. I passionately hope MPs will find a way to back the deal I've negotiated with the EU. But I am not prepared to delay Brexit any further than the 30th of June. We asked you the question already, and you gave us your answer. Now, you want us to get on with it. And that is what I am determined to do.
Meanwhile, EU Council President and summit host Donald Tusk admitted that European leaders are suffering Brexit fatigue. He said he feared his hopes for an orderly Brexit agreement with a plan in place to prevent economic and political chaos may prove frail, even illusory. Tusk also said that EU leaders could approve a short delay to Brexit if British lawmakers finally approve the withdrawal deal they have twice rejected.
In the light of the consultations that I have conducted over the past days, I believe that a short extension will be possible, but it will be conditional on a positive vote on the withdrawal agreement in the House of Commons.
Now, earlier, as Theresa May announced she is requesting a delay until June 30 for the UK's departure from the EU, one of her party's pro-Brexit MPs says she will be betraying the British people if she goes ahead with it.
The idea that 3 years after voting to leave the EU, the people of this country should be asked to elect a new set of MEPs is, I believe, unacceptable. It will be a failure to deliver on the referendum decision that this House said it would honour.
Mr. Speaker, we're now in the midst of a full-scale national crisis. Incompetence, failure and intransigence from the Prime Minister and her government have brought us to this point. Parliament has rejected her deal. It's rejected no deal. The Prime Minister now has no plan.
Prime Minister, if you continue to apply for an extension to Article 50, you will be betraying the British people. If you don't, you will be honouring their instruction. Prime Minister, it is entirely down to you. History will judge you at this moment.
I have always wanted us to be able to leave on the 29th of March. But I believe, as was said during the referendum campaign by those who wanted to leave, that it was better to leave with a negotiated deal with the European Union.
Yes. In other business news, the EU's powerful antitrust regulators slapped tech giant Google with a new fine over unfair competition in Europe's latest salvo against Silicon Valley. Take a look.
Between 2006 and 2016, Google's behavior was illegal under EU antitrust rules. It prevented its rivals from having a chance to innovate and to compete in the market on their merits. The fine of 1.49 billion euros reflects the serious and the sustained nature of Google's infringement. And anyone, of course, who has suffered damage because of Google's behavior can also claim compensation from Google through national courts.
Third major decision against the search engine behemoth Brussels sanctioned Google's once popular AdSense advertising service, saying it illegally restricted client websites from displaying ads from ad service rivals. Google and the EU have been at loggerheads about the monopoly of Google over internet search in Europe since 2009, and the AdSense case was the only complaint still open. The fine brings Google's total tab with the EU to 8.2 billion euros in less than 2 years, which amounts to far less than the maximum fine of 10% of Google's annual turnover according to Vestager. In July 2018, the U.S. giant was ordered to pay a record 4.34 billion euros for abusing the dominant position of Android, its smartphone operating system, to help assure the supremacy of its search engine. A year earlier, it slapped Google with a fine of 2.42 billion euros for abusing its dominant position by favoring its Google shopping price comparison service in search results. Google has appealed both decisions to the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg. Responding to this latest ruling, Google Public Affairs Chief Kent Walker said the company had already made a wide range of changes to, quote, our products to address the Commission's concerns. Hoping to end a decade-long dispute, Google on Tuesday unveiled a series of tweaks to its European search engine, results that would allow certain rivals a more prominent position on results pages. The news continues here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back.
ASEAN in Focus, Monday to Friday, 2 to 2:30 p.m.
The head of Japan's Olympic Committee said he would step down in June as French authorities probe his involvement in payments made before Tokyo was awarded the 2020 Summer Games.
6月27日の評議委員会をもちまして任期を終了し退任することといたしました。
He said his decision had nothing to do with the investigation. The 71-year-old said he would also be stepping down from the International Olympic Committee. Takeda has come under pressure not to seek an additional term when his current mandate ends in June, after it was revealed that French authorities believe they have evidence of corruption in the awarding of the 2020 Games to Tokyo. Current JOC rules requires candidates for the top post to be 70 or younger at the time of their candidacy, but there had been rumors the committee was considering a change to allow Takeda to stay on through 2020. In recent months, however, the investigation into Takeda has become an unwelcome distraction for organizers of the Games with less than 500 days until the opening ceremony. In the NBA, Dirk Nowitzki, who helped revolutionize the game as a big man with a potent long-range jump shot, passed Wilt Chamberlain on the National Basketball Association all-time scoring list on Monday. The 40-year-old German, who is playing in his 21st and possibly final season with the Dallas Mavericks, needed 4 points in a home game Monday to pass Chamberlain, who scored 31,419 in his Hall of Fame career. Nowitzki reached the milestone by hitting a 16-foot shot with 8.33 left in the opening quarter against the New Orleans Pelicans. The longtime face of the Mavericks thrilled the home crowd, who were standing on their feet in anticipation of the moment. Nowitzki finished with 8 points, giving him 31,424 in his career as the Pelicans won 129-125 in overtime. Nowitzki is now the 6th leading all-time scorer behind Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Karl Malone, and Jabbar. The league's leading scorer, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, is the lone 7-footer star scorer more points than Nowitzki, whose jump shot and ability to hit three-pointers from beyond the arc changed the North American game. Nowitzki has yet to make a decision on whether this is the final season of his career, but he is widely expected to retire. As the NBA now pushes for the playoffs, more teams are looking to make a run. Our EBC Sports correspondent Melissa Potes, as she covers the game between the Orlando Magic and the Atlanta Hawks.
Trying to make a playoff push, the Orlando Magic face the Atlanta Hawks. Currently seated 9th in the Eastern Conference, the Magic need to help themselves and help from others to make the playoffs. In the first half, Orlando center Nikola Vucevic and forward Aaron Gordon were determined to make their presence felt. Vucevic had 17 points and 8 rebounds in the first quarter, while Gordon contributed with 9 points in the second quarter. Although the Hawks had a balanced attack with contributions from everyone on the team, Orlando would take the lead at the half 56-46. In the second half, Vucevic and Gordon continued to lead the way for Orlando, tallying 27 points and 20 rebounds, and 22 points and 8 rebounds respectively. Led by rookie sensation Trae Young's 20 points, Atlanta played well enough to win, scoring more points in the paint and having more fast break points, but this was negated by their 18 turnovers.
So we didn't shoot the ball well, but I thought we had good intensity, and even though it was 2 days in a row for them, if you look at the offensive numbers they've been putting up, I mean, I think our defense was very good, which this time of year is obviously critical.
The Magic would seal the win 101-91, doing their part to help move themselves closer to playoff contention, but will have to play with this intensity for the last remaining games of the season. Reporting to you from Amway Center in Orlando, Florida, I'm Melissa Potas, and I'm always one with 25.
Thank you, Melissa. Meanwhile, these are the results of the games today in the NBA. And these are the stories for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez, and I'm 1 with 25.
EBC Films' Guerrero premiered in Moscow, Russia. The film portrays the ups and downs in the life of a boxer. It's told in a witty and heartwarming manner. The movie prides itself in promoting family and Christian values. Our EBC correspondent in Russia, Sunshine Bumanlag, reports from Moscow.
We're here at Vega Hotel, Moscow, Russia, for the premiere showing of the film Guerrero, released by EBC Films.
A lot of Filipinos and other nationalities in Moscow had a chance to witness the first ever screening of the movie Guerrero. The Guerrero is a drama comedy. The story centers on the close relationship between two brothers The boxer Ramon, played by Genesis Gomez, and 10-year-old Miguel Sabinorio.
Si Kuya pa din ang bida. Ganun daw talaga. Ang mga bida, palaging talo sa umpisa.
The movie aims to educate and inspire the viewers with its moral values. Guerrero is directed by Carlo J. Cuevas, the director of the award-winning film Walang Take Two.
First of all, the movie is it's a nice one. It's a good one. Actually, it's good for the family to watch, and it has lots of moral values that we can learn from it, and especially for the young ones, for the relationship with the brothers and sister, or with the brother and how do you call this? For the brothers. This the story is it's a good pattern to give an inspiration for the youngs.
Did you like the film Guerrero?
Yes, I did.
Why?
Because it was pretty unexpected, and when I was watching it, I liked it, and the moral of the story is but two brothers never give up in each other's dreams. I would recommend to watch this film. It would teach you some stuff that you would not know from other situations, and I liked it.
Panoorin niyo po ang pelikula at makakapulutan po ito ng aral, lalo na po sa pangpamilya, ang relasyon sa ating pamilya, kung pagpapahalaga at pagmamahal.
The moral values that we learn in the movie is about the faith in God and family relationship. If you have a problem in life, don't give up, because there is God that will guide us anytime. And I recommend it to all my friends to watch the movie Guerrero, because it's a very nice movie. We can get moral values in these movies.
It's really a very good film, although it is a comedy, but it's full of moral values. The ties of the family, from mother to brother, the elder brother, they are full of encouragement to each other. Now, even though they are encountering many trials, still the tie is intact. Not only in the family, but also among friends. Na pag ang isa ay nasa baba, we must learn to lift it up para kung ano man ang layunin natin ay pare-parehas ng maating. So, isa pa ay higit sa lahat, kapag may dumarating ang mga problema, if the trials, if the tribulations come, isa lang ang dapat nating isipin, na habang nabubuhay tayo, may pag-asa, and above all, maging inspirasyon natin ang mga difficulties, na maging it's the encouragement for us to fight and to attain our goals, and most especially and finally, dapat nating alalahanin na meron tayong Diyos at tayong patuloy na lumalakad kung ano man ang kanyang ibig para sa atin.
From Moscow, Russia, I am Sunshine Bumalag, EBC Russia correspondent, and I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Sunshine. Meanwhile, the Iglesia ni Cristo continues its aid to humanity around the world. This time, they reached out to communities in Bogota, Colombia. Our ABC correspondent from there, Janica Era Peralta, reports.
According to the reports of the Statistics Agency, Departamento Administrativo Nacional de Estadística, or DANE, although the poverty rates here in Colombia continued to drop in 2018, the nation's capital, Bogota, increased for the third year in a row. And the impoverishment is more than double than the United States. Responding to the needs of residents here in Bogota, be they spiritual, emotional, or material, the Iglesia ni Cristo in this part of the world sponsored an evangelical mission and an aid to humanity event. People from different parts of Bogota, such as Bosa, Haijuelos, Salitre, Portal Tonal, Los Martires de Santa Fe, came hours prior to the set time in anticipation of how the event could help alleviate their situation. The event commenced with the preaching of God's words by Brother Edwin Peralta. Yes, Amparo Velasquez said she loves what was taught and appreciates that the church reaches out to people. Another attendee, a migrant from Venezuela, recalls how hard it is in his homeland and is thankful for the church's help to people here in Bogota. Bags filled with groceries and other daily essentials were distributed to dozens of families who attended the event. Reaching out to people in this time of hunger, conflicts, and divisiveness helps make our communities a little better. Reporting from Bogota, Colombia, I am Janica Prada for Eagle News 1 with 25.
A super warm moon, the latest or the last super moon of 2019, has been observed around the world. Take a look. The last super moon of 2019, known as the super warm equinox moon, is seen above Los Angeles on March 20, 2019, coinciding with the spring equinox. The last of 3 supermoons, which began this year. The warm moon gets its name from tradition or folklore tradition occurring at a time when frost on the ground melts and earthworms begin to emerge. Supermoons occur when the moon is closest to the earth, making it appear bigger and brighter than normal. And with that, we end tonight's program. I'm Alma Angeles, always 1 with 25. Good night.